switching between genres from the small-scale skirmishes of Warhammer 40,000 mechanic to the automated production chains that keep the colossal IXION space station running. Developer Bulwark presents a compelling premise. What do you do when your ship experiment accidentally destroys a piece of the moon, ending the existence of humanity on Earth? But the migration from team tactics to colony management and collective trauma management comes with pacing issues and a host of technical difficulties. One would think, with so much Greek nomenclature in circulation, someone would have taken the trouble to check the mark on whose hands lies the future of humanity rests. You see, Dolos, the name of both the company that funds your ambitious space adventure, and the CEO whose philanthropic proclamations sound strange even before disaster strikes, means malice in Greek, which in hindsight paints the disgrace that almost destroys the species in a whole new light. Stranded in a depressingly lifeless and suddenly inhospitable galaxy, my primary concern as administrator of the Tiquin space station is to ensure the survival of the crew and find out what went so disastrously wrong during launch. As with similar base-building games, the tantalizing scale of the task ahead is masked by a reassuringly limited number of starting options. Build essential buildings such as living quarters and infirmaries, design roads to facilitate transportation between them, tending to the station's hopelessly bloody outer shell, a hull ripped apart by the force of that shattering leap. It's a balanced and fairly elegant job for the first few hours, even if Bulwark decides to keep the training wheels on a little too long as he teaches the novice administrators how to avoid the two biggest threats: mutiny from an increasingly in distress and the hull disappearing into thin air. To avoid this, I must procure the raw materials to be converted into alloys off the ship, arrange my limited space to accommodate the warehouses which store them and the factories which process them, and direct the courses of the mining and merchant ships in their downward flow. Tiquin. IXION handles these logistical responsibilities well for the first few hours, but at the same time I felt like I was being held up too long. I was impatient to roam the galaxy. As far as crew morale is concerned, the same probes launched into the void in search of mineral-rich asteroids and floating mountains of ice will discover the locations of the events. Investigating these can answer pressing questions about your current situation, reveal caches of cryogenically frozen humans to thaw and add to your crew, or pinpoint precise locations of scientific data that can be retrieved and used to create new unlocking technologies that improve conditions of life and the possibility of long-term survival. These are fun events that offer a degree of unpredictability and a welcome change from the monotonous pace of base building. Their results advance the plot of Tiquin's pilgrimage, shedding light on a complicated backstory, sometimes with rather simplistic binary choices, but sometimes with something more exciting: the fragment of a plan. After all, it's good to live off locally harvested insect protein. But like any star traveler, the refugees of IXION crave a cause for optimism, something to dream about. A new hope. This dream manifests as a set of coordinates. Protagoras, an experimental Dolos ship that disappeared from the solar system after the crash, has charted a course to a potentially habitable planet. The reveal sets off the game's first major shock, not only suggesting that there's more than a meager existence orbiting the smoldering hulk of the Earth, but also the rush for resources needed to complete gear of Tiquin for the next one: interstellar jump and subsequent pursuit. At this point, after several hours of enjoyable but rather tedious drudgery, the game finally opens up to an exciting array of possibilities: an unknown star system to explore and freshly unlocked technologies to research, some with significant implications for how you manage your colony. For example, building a DLS center allowed me to play politician, enacting legislation to improve region-wide productivity, or waging propaganda to appease the wayward masses, while the construction of a waste treatment center made it possible to recycle waste from neighborhoods and treatment plants, efficiently create new resources from scratch. New dangers are also emerging. A higher rate of work-related accidents and resulting power outages force you to invest in resource-draining solar panels and batteries, while growing crew resentment as each cycle slips into the following with little progress inspires a sense of urgency in your search for the elusive Protagoras, lest their despair turn to anger. It's a necessary escalation, as I had admittedly started to feel a little too comfortable by this point, but the game's annoying tendency to throw each mishap at me at once made the sudden spike in difficulty artificial and annoying. Event picking is also getting more sophisticated, sometimes requiring important caches to be transferred from your ship, others putting your science team at risk for a single misstep. And of course that shattered hull, IXION's equivalent of Frostpunk's voracious generator, suffers more, both with each section of the Tiquin unlocked to take advantage of the extra space and with each interstellar jump that brings you closer in search of a permanent home brings. An emotionless announcement from the ship's AI estimates it can sustain a maximum of 4 jumps, which is equivalent to game chapters. Despite the risks involved, the most exciting thing about IXION after each jump with a new star system is when the focus shifts from compiling the details of what has already happened to mapping out a future yet to be written, a leap into the unknown. Unfortunately, things are also starting to fall apart. Moon buggy, towards the end, almost as if collapsing under the weight of its numbers, IXION's significant technical issues are highlighted: severe frame rate drops, screen locks, unpredictable menus. The bugs I've encountered range from harmless to ruining the game. Restarting a chapter is Bulwark's nuclear option when all else fails, but when I tried it after cornering in Chapter 4, I reloaded the first one instead. At some point, 2/3 of my crew inexplicably disappeared. And when I finally made it to the end, that last button pressed to lead my people to the promised land remained a cruel gray, even though I'd met all the requirements. At times I felt like I was struggling not so much with an expected challenge as with the game's faulty circuits, although it should be noted that an ongoing series of patches throughout the game review fixed some of the more glaring issues, including the dreadful ultimate paralysis some buttons. Other less accidental flaws become apparent as the story progresses. The closing sequences of the chapter often require a concerted effort towards a big goal, like awakening 2,000 souls from their cryopods, meaning nothing interesting to do for a long time, ironically leaving you with a surge of excitement at the exact moment you want gallop somewhere new. Even worse, the balance of production chain management, which forms the interactive backbone of the game, is usually tough, leaving you spinning for hours before getting the side effects of one bad decision. Energy to a specific specialization become clear. One of the joys of the production chain subgenre certainly lies in the creative rush of uprooting and rebuilding in the blink of an eye. But the way IXION slips stealthily into apocalyptic spirals of unsustainability makes reloading preferable to redesigning. Frustrated by the mounting woes, but excited to see what lay ahead, I quickly realized after reading the first few chapters that finding a new home for humanity would involve more than just retrieving a set of coordinates. Locating Protagores is the first step in a much longer quest that will see a surprisingly combative United Nations task force track down the Dolos ships and a mysterious group called the Black Market Society with shady dealings with both organizations. Surprisingly, given the uneventful nature of the game up to that point, the final act evokes more Lovecraftian horror than the logistical challenges of a traditional base builder. The mood in these tense moments was heightened by the swelling choruses and menacing drones of Guillaume David's always excellent score. Different endings become available depending on major decisions made during your 30-hour journey in that final chapter. When the last of the fugitives landed on that fabled Earth-like planet, my feelings were mixed. Satisfaction at reaching a conclusion in an engrossing story and securing a future for humanity, but also relief at the retirement of a simulator of fussy and often counterintuitive management. Creating those self-sustaining production chains, then sitting back and watching the Tiquin run smoothly on autopilot was, as always, a very satisfying experience. But at the same time, the countless bugs, long periods of inactivity, and disastrous dominoes collapsing that can result from a single omission or wrong decision made for an often maddening game, one whose major hurdles, designed or unintended, brought me little joy in overcoming. Our rating 2.5 of 5. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and support my channel.